Just as a disclaimer, this video is based on my opinion only, as well as my personal research and experience with mental health issues discussed. I am not a mental health professional. This video was just made to promote a fun discussion and for entertainment purposes. That being said, be sure to stick around. Talking about mental health experiences can help you identify symptoms in yourself or others that might warrant more exploration with a professional, if you want. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe. The Office is one of my all-time favorite shows. It has made me laugh, helped me fall asleep, and has even made me immune to secondhand embarrassment. And the king of causing that secondhand embarrassment? Michael Scott. Michael is an interesting person with a number of colorful personality traits that could make him eligible for all sorts of diagnoses. He's vain, yet has a sensitive side, socially awkward, wants friends but can't seem to make them, and gets sidetracked with all sorts of tasks. I've seen diagnoses for Michael Scott that range from narcissistic personality disorder to bipolar to autism. But there's one diagnosis that I haven't seen too many people talk about in the Office Facebook groups I'm in, and that might be because it's a diagnosis that isn't as sexy as the others. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. I honestly don't know if you guys are going to think this is obvious or not, but again, I haven't seen it nearly enough when this discussion comes up in various fan groups. Some of Michael's symptoms are stereotypical ADHD, but others not so much. Fans of The Office have seen Michael get distracted and be a nuisance to many of his coworkers. However, the first symptom that is not necessarily known or talked about with ADHD is hyperfocus. This is a bigger symptom I noticed in Michael after I was diagnosed and researched further into the disorder and observed in my own behaviors. Hyperfocus might normally be seen as distractibility, but it's a little different, at least in my experience. It's what one might call a superpower, if one knows how to utilize it in a helpful way. But unfortunately, a lot of us ADHD folks haven't quite figured out how to do so. The thing about hyperfocus is that once a person has a thing that they're focusing on, it consumes them and they're convinced it's the best thing ever. And it often leads to impulsively spending lots of money, making bad decisions, and often both. Another thing I want to note is that with hyperfocus, it often causes the person experiencing it to ignore the things around them and to not realize time passing by and to possibly ignore responsibilities that they might have or other tasks that they meant to do, which I think we see a lot with Michael. Especially when the other coworkers are trying to get him to do work and he's focused on other tasks instead, or the thing he's hyper-focused on.
Once a year they bring in a little cart and they give away free pretzels. It's really not a big deal. To some people it is.
Productivity is important, but how can I be productive if I have this one little thing in my brain that I cannot get out? And that one little thing is a soft pretzel. So I'm just going to have my soft pretzel. I get to work and I'm going to be super productive. Look out for me!
Some other examples include the episode Chair Model. In this episode, Michael is supposed to be focused on deciding what to do with office surplus money. He has to make a decision on whether to purchase new chairs or a copier, both of which the office needs. Instead, he spends his day trying to get a new girlfriend, and specifically, focusing on a chair model in a catalog of office chairs he's looking at. He wastes his whole day with this project. However, we also see how hyperfocus can benefit Michael at his job, along with other ADHD superpowers like creativity and seemingly random moments of brilliance. We see throughout the show that he's a great salesman.
Right down the street. Kenneth Road, born and raised. Spent my whole life right here in Lackawanna County, and I do not intend on moving. I know this place. I know how many hospitals we have. I know how many schools we have. It's home, you know? I know the challenges this county's up against. Here's the thing about those discount suppliers. They don't care. They come in, they undercut everything, and they run us out of business. And then, once we're all gone, we jack up the prices.
I know.
It's bad.
It's terrible.
We also see how his hyperfocus and creativity come together to pull together a great ad at the last second that everyone loves, and is clearly better than the generic one, even if the corporate office rejects the one Michael makes. An ADHD brain works differently, and while his employees may have thought it was annoying, and even if it wasn't the most conventional thing, it's totally an ADHD moment of both hilarious and weird creative energy that went into Michael deciding to decide his replacement for his job based on who won the games on Peach Day. His unconventional management practices are also what led his team to eventually holding on to the company for dear life while all their other branches were failing.
But what are you doing right? Right what? Utica, Albany, all the other branches are struggling, but your branch is reporting strong numbers. Look, you're not our most traditional guy, but clearly something you are doing is right.
The problem with us ADHD people, though, is that we have a hard time explaining how we got to where we are. Our minds move so fast and make connections so rapidly and often without any sense that can be explained. We have trouble verbalizing our thought process surrounding creative ideas. That's why another reason I think Michael has ADHD is the iconic scene where he is invited by his boss to the corporate office to explain why his branch is doing so well. Michael explains it, and he even thinks it makes sense, but it clearly does not.
David, here it is. My philosophy is basically this. And this is something that I live by. And I always have. And I always will. Don't ever, for any reason, do anything to anyone, for any reason, ever, no matter what, no matter where, or who you are with, or where you are going, or where you've been. Ever. For any reason whatsoever.
Not everyone might guess that Michael has ADHD when he gets his feelings hurt, when he tries to awkwardly bond with peers and they reject him, or do something without him.
Meredith has an Evite from Jim. Barbecue at Jim's tonight. Tonight. Wonder where my evitation is. Click on guest list. Angela, Stanley, Oscar, Meredith, Phyllis, Kevin, Creed. Must be... no.
Rejection sensitivity dysphoria is what I identified in Michael when I related to his behaviors, as I struggle with ADHD. RSD is not just a symptom of ADHD, but it's certainly a less well-known one. RSD is basically defined as a sensation of pain and emotional intensity at a higher level than most people experience when criticized or rejected by someone. Once internalized, this feeling can make someone who is feeling perfectly fine turn extremely sad or distraught. To avoid or cope with this feeling, those who experience it may become people pleasers or they just stop trying altogether. I think we see both of these things at some point with Michael throughout the show.
That's pretty young.
Yeah.
Are you gonna eat with us?
Of course. Hanging with the crew that I am one of. Hanging with my cup of noodles. This is a meal in a cup, right here. Hot, tasty. Reminds me of college. Lived on this stuff. Brain food. You know what I really, really miss about college? The parties. Everybody would go. The athletes, the nerds, professors.
The professors would go.
However, a lot of these symptoms, in my opinion, are implied rather than explicitly shown. A personal connection that I have made with Michael that may or may not be ADHD related is the need to overcompensate or over-explain things when people already understand what is being said or understand the lesson that's being taught.
Oh, my life!
Michael, what's wrong?
Everything's wrong! The stress of my office has caused me to go into a depression!
While I've never tried to jump off a building to get attention and teach a lesson about workplace safety, sometimes I have the tendency to frustrate people I'm interacting with by giving examples. This may be from feelings of inadequacy or being misunderstood a lot of the time, both of which Michael experiences throughout the show. While the examples I gave can also be perceived as Michael wanting attention, which is also true, that's often how people with ADHD are perceived with some of the seemingly strange things we do. Just attention seeking to be annoying, when in reality, we want validation. Sure, it's seemingly silly that Michael gets jealous of the workplace safety training that Daryl gives, to the point where he tries to make his own training dangerous by almost jumping off the roof. But to him, it was justified. He loves his job and wants it to be taken seriously, and feels that this is the way to do so. This sort of leads into the last thing I want to mention about Michael Scott and ADHD, the lack of social skills. While there is no excuse for some of the things Michael does, some of it definitely comes from a place of wanting to belong, or just not knowing the rules of social interaction, something that many neurotypical people inherently pick up on. I've heard the theory that Michael, and Dwight, might be autistic, but for Michael, that just doesn't quite suit him. However, ADHD and autism are similar in several ways, one of them being the lack of social skills. While a lack of social skills might be a more stereotypical symptom of ADHD, connecting it to autism is my way of making the connection that it's a bit more of a struggle than people tend to realize when thinking of ADHD. So, what do you think? Does Michael have ADHD? Do you think something fits him better? Leave your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe. Bye!